far can you push a woman before she decides that it's time to burn the world down? Welcome back to Cthulhu. I'm your host Manasvi, and today we're going to be getting into the Korean drama World of Kingdom. We're first going to dive into Ashin of the North. This is a historical take on K-zombies, kind of similar to Train to Busan, but I actually like this universe more than Train to Busan, only because we get to spend more time with the characters, so we get to know a little bit more about them. A quick disclaimer about Ashin of the North: this actually came out after the Kingdom drama, but it is the prequel to the show. I decided to do the retelling in chronological order for reasons that I will reveal later, so that is why we're covering Ashin of the North first. Before we get into the recap of this movie though, I do want to mention that this movie does allude to acts of sexual assault, and there's one very dehumanizing scene, so if you're not in the right state of mind, please turn this video off, go roll around on your floor or on your bed, and I will see you next time. You do not need to understand this movie in order to understand what's going on in the drama that we will be covering next time, so you really won't be missing anything. If you do choose to stay, please keep in mind that you can and should leave if this becomes too much. As always, I have linked resources down below if you need it, but please take care of yourself, and I will see you next time. Now, let's jump into Korea's past. I don't usually do this, but I'm actually going to start this one off by describing what's going on in the title song. So this is like the little credits thing that plays before they actually start any of the drama or the movie. And this title song sets the tone right from the start. This is going to be a bleak movie. It starts with a man laying on a table, and he's got needles sticking out like everywhere. There's also smoke coming off of his body. Think like full body acupuncture. And then we see the King of Korea laying on the table as well. His hands and feet are tied up, and somebody, most likely a doctor, is using tongs to pick up these violet flowers. He then boils the flowers, and then he starts inserting needles into the king and starts setting up incense? I'm not 100% sure if that's what it is, but it starts releasing smoke. The king has some raw rice and a pearl in his mouth, and the doctor pours red liquid, which I'm assuming is blood, onto the rice, and the smoke goes into the king's nostrils, and when he opens his eyes, his pupils are gone. It is just the whites of his eyes. Now, before we get any further, we need to get some background on this time in Korea that we are focusing on. This is set during the Japanese invasion of Korea, so during the Joseon era. The Japanese invasion left the southern lands of Joseon in ruins, and now another storm is looming in the northern lands of Joseon. The Jurchens across the Manchurian River plain have started gathering at the basin of the Pajui River under the vicious rule of the powerful Pajui. It's said that 10,000 Jurchens, when they gather, no army in the world can actually defeat them, and feeling threatened by the Pajui's suspicious movements, warriors of Joseon have scouted another group of Jurchens in order to keep them in check. They were Jurchens that were already living in Joseon, but even though they had lived there for a century, neither the Koreans, so the Joseon people, or the Jurchens considered them their own. So that is kind of the political landscape of Korea at the moment. In present day, someone is walking through this dark cave with a torch. It's a very ominous looking cave, and it's some kind of shrine because there are these drawings that are etched into the wall. The drawings on the wall tell the story of a deer and a tiger. A deer is walking around looking for some yummy food when it sees some really nice violet flowers, and the leaves of these flowers have these like egg-like things growing on the bottom, and the deer eats the flowers and the leaves. A couple seconds later, the deer falls onto the ground and starts squealing. Eventually, it stops squealing, its eyes fall closed, only for them to open a couple seconds later, but the pupils are gone. It's once again just the whites of the eyes. The deer gets up and wanders around the forest, honestly looking kind of groggy. It's like swaying mindlessly when it hears a growling coming from this bush in front of it. A tiger is hiding behind the bush, watching as the deer walks closer and closer to the bush. And once the deer is close enough, the tiger pounces. The deer squeals and, oddly enough, tries to bite the tiger back, but that doesn't work, and the tiger snaps the deer's neck. That's the story drawn into the walls of the cave. And next to the drawing are the words, "This plant brings the dead back to life, but you have to pay the price." And the camera slowly pans out to show the face of the person looking at these drawings, and it's a little girl, Ashin. Meanwhile, in a Pajui village that is on the northern border of the country, just to clarify, the Joseon era is an actual part of Korean history. There are so many dramas filmed with the Joseon background kind of as a setting for it, and this point in history is before the Cold War, so the Korean peninsula wasn't split into North and South Korea yet. So at this northern village, two policemen, is I guess what you would call them, are walking through a forest when they see a section of the forest that is squared off with a rope and some sort of talisman charm-like thing hanging off the rope. They go inside because they weren't aware of anyone asking this place to be blocked off, and deep inside this area there is a mountain of naked human bodies. The word about this human mountain spreads to a deputy commissioner, Chirok, and he rushes to the citadel of Mapo. The people of Mapo see Chirok rushing through the streets, and that's all they need to confirm the rumor that has been circulating. The word around town is that the Jurchen people who went into Pesagun, which is the forest, to get wild ginseng were all killed. And we learned that according to the army, it's against the law to enter Pesagun, and the general population think that there is something absolutely sinister living in those woods because no one has been allowed to enter Pesagun for the past 100 years. Meanwhile, Chirok is looking at the mountain of bodies while a soldier debriefs him. They're all from the same clan. They're all Pajui Jurchens. The word has already spread, and it's really only a matter of time before the Pajui find out. What do we do, sir? Let's go to the Boundary Village. The Boundary Village is another Jurchen village, but these people are living in absolute poverty. They're living in cloth huts even though winter is in full swing. They're dirty because they haven't been able to shower, and they get treated like shit by the people of Chosun. One of the villagers, Tahab, is cutting some meat for people who are definitely much more wealthier than them, and the entire time this woman who has asked for the meat, she is looking at Tahab like he is the scum of the earth. Tahab calmly cuts the meat, packs it up into this wooden tub that's on a servant's back, and the servant gets up and starts walking away when he trips. Tahab steadies the servant by holding onto the wooden tub, but no sooner do his hands land on the tub does the woman spit on him. "Remove your filthy hands." Tahab removes his hands, and the woman pulls out this white cloth, grabs a piece of meat that touched Tahab's hands, and throws the piece of meat and the white cloth at him, and then walks away. Tahab must have gotten used to this sort of treatment because he doesn't even bat an eye. Instead, he picks up the meat, holds it up, and smiles brightly while yelling out, "Hey, everyone, let's eat some meat." The village folk are ecstatic because it's been so long since they've gotten the chance to eat meat. While Tahab is scooping some soup into people's bowls, one of the kids points out an Ashin who is trying to sneak her way into a hut. Tahab turns to look at her, and he is not impressed as Ashin faces him with a guilty look. While trying to hide her muddy boots, he pulls her to the side, and they sit across from each other while Tahab holds up her boots on a stick with narrowed eyes. He drops the boots onto the floor and moves the stick, but Ashin is faster. She grabs his stick and hides it behind her back. "Hey, how dare you? Give it back. Give it back to me, Ashin." I'm sorry, Dad." "Ashin, how many times have I told you not to go into Pesagun? You told me that it wasn't actually dangerous, Dad. You told me yourself that people spread rumors so they could take all the wild ginseng for themselves." "That's why I told you not to go. Do you know what's more dangerous than monsters? Soldiers." "Then what are we gonna do, Dad? Are we really just gonna let Mom die just like that?" Ashin turns to look to their hut, and in their hut lays a woman looking deadly sick. She's breathing really heavily, and Ashin continues. "They say that the wild ginseng there can even bring the dead back. We can try it on Mom, Dad." "You're not a wild ginseng hunter, Ashin. How will you find wild ginseng in that mountain all by yourself? Look at the size of that thing." I'm not sure if it's wild ginseng, Dad, but I found this really strange plant. It was drawn on a mural that said that it can bring back the dead." "That's just nonsense, Ashin. In those parts, there are no shrines left. Listen to me and do not go back there. Anyone who sneaked in there and has gotten caught, they were punished, had their tongues cut out, Ashin. I can never let that happen to you. Do you understand?" Before Ashin can respond, a horse neigh rings through the village. It's Chirok. He pulls Tahab into a little room. 15 Pajui Jurchens who went into Pesagun crossing the river to hunt wild ginseng were all found dead. "They're Pajui Jurchens? Are you sure, my lord? But who would do something like that?" "It was a tiger." Tahab looks up at Chirok, and you can tell that he doesn't believe a word coming out of this man's mouth. Chirok probably also knows that Tahab doesn't believe him, but he doesn't care and keeps speaking. "You will have to cross the river. Go spread the word that all the Pajui Jurchens were killed by a tiger." Tahab nods, and when Chirok is walking out, he grabs his arm. "When will my village receive a government position, sir? an official one. We are very aware of your loyalty, Tahab. Don't rush. You must be patient and wait for it. Good news will come soon. Chirok then makes his way to a military camp where they've gathered the bodies of the people that they have found. One of the soldiers starts debriefing Chirok again. We verified that the limbs were torn by wild animals, but it happened after they died. It wasn't a tiger. They were killed by humans. I'm aware of it. Chirok gets down and starts observing the bodies, and on top of each of their hands there's this tattoo that they have, and his mouth starts running again. If 10,000 Jurchens come together, a great danger will befall us. While Chosun is floundering in chaos during the Japanese investigation, Aidakan, the head of the Pajawi, has gathered the Jurchens under his wing. The Japanese in the south are preparing to attack, and if the Pajawi in the north use this as an excuse to invade us as well, what will happen to this country? We can never let them know that those men were killed by our own people. They weren't attacked by people, they were attacked by a tiger. Chirok then goes to Pomil. Pomil is a nobleman of the Haewon clan, but he has gotten demoted because he abandoned his people and fled during a war battle, so the king kind of just shoved him in isolation, and now he's just a salty, messed up rich man. Chirok barges into Pomil's room where Pomil is drinking while watching a kiseng dance, and if you're curious, kisengs I don't think they exist as an institution anymore, so I'm gonna go with were, but they were women of the lower class, and they all lived together in these gigantic houses. Their jobs or duties, I guess you can say, was to please, amuse, understand, and provide companionship to men. These men are typically of the noble class because they're the only ones who can really afford such pleasure, and more often than not, a bunch of noblemen will gather at these houses and have political conversations while women play instruments, dance, get groped, and pour drinks. Anyway, Pomil is enjoying his time with a kiseng when Chirok barges in. The bodies of 15 dead Pajawi Jurchens were found in a pit. Are you certain that there were 15 of them? Are you saying that I got the number wrong? I heard that you went hunting in the Birch Pass 2 days ago. So tell me, since when do I need your permission to go hunting? Every single Pajawi Jurchen receives martial arts training from an early age. With that, it would be nearly impossible to take down 15 of them all at once, unless it was you and your elite guards who did it. You better discipline your men before someone else finds out. Those Jurchen rats, they dared to steal the Haewoncho clan's wild ginseng. They all deserve to die. No, you should have captured them and punished them according to law. The wild ginseng does not belong to the Haewoncho clan. It belongs to His Majesty, the king of this country. Entitled yet insecure Pomil pulls out his sword and he swipes it near Chirok's neck, but Chirok barely flinches. He's probably used to all this rich people shit, right? So Chirok simply gives him a warning. If you commit a crime and endanger this country once again, you won't be able to avoid consequences, even if you're from the Haewoncho clan. The people are growing anxious, so I will begin a tiger hunt to calm their anxiety. You would do well to stay as you are and keep out of trouble. Meanwhile, back at the military camp, the soldiers have bagged up the bodies and they are burning them in a fire. That same night, we see Aidakan and a pair of his men scoping out this large wheat flower field located at the border area near Ashin's village. At Ashin's home, she is watching her dad as he's getting ready to go somewhere while she voices her concerns. Are you sure that it was a tiger, Dad? The Pajawi learned martial arts from as soon as they can walk. They all got killed by one tiger. If that turns out to be a lie, no one will like it when they find out the truth. It might put you in danger, Dad. Being undercover is always going to be dangerous, Ashin. While I'm gone, it's your job to look after the family, okay? Ashin nods and her dad exits the house, but Ashin rushes after him. Father, let's just go back to our clan across the river. You can't let them take all of your pelts and risk your life to go undercover for them. Are you really gonna let them walk all over you forever? Peseokgun is where our ancestors used to live. The king of Chosun bestowed the land upon our clan, and we were battling hunger and thieves on the barren fields on the other side of the river. The king offered us a public office and exempt us from paying taxes. He was very gracious to us. Hence, I cannot betray Chosun. Do you understand? They may have been gracious to our ancestors, but they've taken everything that they gave us back, Dad. Hang in there just a little longer, Ashin. Soon I will be officially appointed and we will live a good life. Tahab gets into the boat and he rows away as Ashin watches. And over the next few days, her mother's condition gets worse. The village people try as hard as they can to help her, but it's come to a point where only a doctor can help. But the problem is that no doctor will set foot in this village, especially not to treat a Jurchen. And Ashin decides to take matters into her own hands. She goes back to the shrine that she was in at the beginning and gets her hands on the violet flowers. On the other side of the river, Tahab is sitting in a marketplace narrating a story. Far past the Anmok River is the Mount Baektu, Chosun's highest mountain. It is so huge that you'll find all kinds of trees and animals. The most famous beast among the animals is the tiger. The crowd oohs and ahs, and a few people inch closer to Tahab and sit down next to him while Tahab continues with his story. They say that the tiger is 1,000 years old. Sometimes it even transforms into a human just like us. No, for real, thousands of men have gone into the mountains and met their death while trying to catch that tiger. Look, haven't you heard of the Pajui Jurchens who climbed the Birch Pass recently? They all got eaten by the tiger. The crowd is still skeptical, and the man sitting next to Tahab turns to face him with a creepy smile. Really? If you're lying to us, you will die. And you can tell that this man is not here to play. He knows that Tahab is spouting BS. Back with Chirok, they've managed to gather a bunch of village people and are using them to kind of go out and put like a show on that they're going to hunt this tiger. One point to note is that some of the people in this party have like these black tattoos on their hand, just like those 15 people who were killed by Pumil. The crowd starts making a bunch of noise with their gongs while walking through the forest, but the pretend hunt quickly turns serious when a tiger really does start biting people. And the reason that this is so strange is because tigers supposedly hate the sound of gongs, so usually they try to avoid them, but this tiger is not running away. The regular people retreat and the police try to take over, and their chase of the tiger takes them all the way to the edge of the flower field, and they're straining their eyes trying to look through the tall flowers when they spot something moving. And all at once, a bunch of things start happening. Chirok and his posse are running around the flower field trying to not only get the tiger, but also the Pajui Jurchens who are in the field as well. The Jurchens are there to get their revenge for their brothers, and after a little tussle, nothing that one singular Jurchen couldn't handle, the tiger falls to the side. The Jurchen cuts open the tiger to take its heart out, but its inside are just goop. The tiger has been dead for a really long time now. The Jurchen soldier gets up and he turns to glare at Chirok. Here's what's really bizarre. We were told that our brothers were killed by a tiger. Then where are their flesh and bones? They are the ones who crossed the borders and entered Paesagun, which is against the law. There is no reason for us to be held responsible for their deaths. Our brothers died on Chosun soil. Prepare yourselves for a very bloody revenge. And they leave. Ashin is running through the forest when she sees a dead body of one of the Jurchens who had joined the hunt. He's got like 3 arrows sticking out of him with like these black and white feathers on the end, but Ashin doesn't have time to worry about this person. She needs to get back to her mom. In her village, things suddenly take a turn for the worse. Screams suddenly start coming from the forest, and a bunch of men are running at Ashin's village. It's Aidakon and his men. The moment these men set foot in the village, it turns into a slaughterhouse. Absolutely no one is safe. Men, women, and children all get hacked to pieces. When Ashin finally makes her way back to her village, everything is in ashes. They burned everything. Ashin runs to her house, but her mother is not in there, and to make things worse, Ashin turns around to see that the bodies of the people that she considers her family are hung by their necks to these wooden posts. Ashin collapses to her knees and she cries her heart out. She's lost everyone that night. The next day, or maybe even a couple days later, it's really hard to tell time, she makes her way to the military camp because where else does she have to go? Her father is away and the rest of the village is gone. She kneels in front of Chirok. I heard about the tragic massacre of your village. Are you the only one who survived? What happened to your father, Tahab? In tears, she places her father's necklace on the ground in front of him. I've heard that the Pajui have executed a spy from Chosun. I don't understand what happened. Why would the Pajui do this to us? I've been racking my brain, but I don't get it. Have you come to see me to find out what happened, Ashin? No, sir, that doesn't matter to me at all. I beg you, avenge my father. A lowborn weakling like me cannot do it, but Chosun can. You have the power to punish them. I'm sorry for your loss, Ashin, but this is not a matter for Chosun to intervene in. My father, he was loyal to Chosun all of his life. Although you never did the right thing and gave him an official post, you could at least do this for him now. It doesn't have to be right away. The next year or the following or even a decade from now, please just make them all shed tears of blood. Then I will make peace with it. I will do anything. I will be your loyal spy if you want, or even work as a butcher if you tell me to. Even if it's something nastier, I will gladly do it. Please avenge my father, the death of my father, please. Chirok decides to let Ashin stay at the base, and one of the soldiers leads a small, cold, and frightened Ashin to this wooden building that will be her home. This building is not really suitable for anyone, let alone a little girl. The building is where the livestock is being kept, and it's made out of really thin wood, and there are holes all over the place, so it's not even providing shelter from all the snow and the wind outside. But Ashin doesn't complain. She makes herself comfortable with some straw, and she tries to get some sleep, but all she can picture in her mind is her father and her village people. The next morning, she gets to work doing farm work and laundry, and they do laundry in the old days. There was no washing machine, so you had to wash them by hand by going to the nearest river, but it was the middle of the winter, so this poor girl is really going through it. But she doesn't complain, and in her spare time she learns how to shoot a bow and an arrow, make arrows, and she even takes trips across the river to study the Pajui military base from afar. She's a woman on a mission, and absolutely nothing is going to get in her way. As days pass, people of the military base start talking about her story. I heard that she's a survivor from the boundary village. That tenacious little wench. I heard that she buried all those bodies by herself. And soon enough, years pass like that. I want to say it's about 10 years, but don't quote me on that. She still lives in that same barn. She's still doing laundry for all of the military men. But she has become a great shot now. The only downside is now that she's a fully grown woman, she has to worry about the scum of the earth military men that she lives with. Even though she has the skills to fight these men and kill them, she can't, because she won't be able to stay at the base if she takes the life of a soldier, and that would mean that she can't see her revenge realized. So she really has no choice but to let herself get physically and sexually assaulted by these trash of the earth men. Over the years, she also managed to complete the map of the Pajui military base, and she hands over all of that information to Chirok, who simply tells her, "Good job," before closing the doors and going back to his meeting. Are you saying that the peace conference with the Japanese was called off? Yes, His Majesty ordered every troop to assemble in the northern region except for the Yuji and the Kange. We will leave behind a few soldiers and prepare for battle then, and keep a close watch on the Pajui's every move. That night, Chirok is walking around the base to make sure everything is ready for battle when he sees a soldier leaving Ashin's barn. Seeing Chirok, the soldier gets onto his knees. What atrocity is this? Please, sir, please forgive me. Please, I won't do this again. Please. If something like this happens again, I will not let it go unpunished. Yes, sir. The scum of the earth man rushes away, and Chirok actually has the audacity to look somber. You can't tell me he truly didn't know this was happening. Either way, he speaks out into the air at Ashin, who has now made her way near the door, just looking completely beaten and broken. I need you to cross the river again. You need to find out in detail what the Pajui are up to. Ashin crosses the river and makes her way into the base and hides behind this haystack when she sees this man reach underneath this wooden crate and pull on a chain. And as he pulls, a person's head pops out from underneath, and then a torso comes out. The man holds this bowl of food up to the chained person's mouth while forcing the prisoner's mouth open. Open your mouth. You have to live a long life. Take it, traitor. And he starts forcing the food down the man's throat. The prisoner swallows as much as he can while choking on the food, and once the bowl is empty, he gets thrown onto the ground. The soldier leaves without seeing Ashin in the area, and Ashin watches on as the prisoner shimmies himself so that he's leaning against the wooden crate behind him. As he's doing this though, Ashin gets a good look at his face, and comes out of her hiding spot to see that this prisoner doesn't have legs and he doesn't have arms, and his face is that of her father's. It is absolutely heartbreaking to watch her break down seeing her father's state, and it's actually really, really bad, guys. I think they also blinded him, and he's very clearly given up on everything. All he really wants to do now is die. That's the biggest gift anyone could give him at this point, and he's not afraid to ask Ashin for it. Ask her to put him out of his misery. She tries to plead with him to go home all night, but even as the sun comes up and she's released him from his chains, her father is still begging her to kill him. So with tears rolling down both their eyes, Ashin stabs her father. She walks away from the Pajui military base as it burns behind her. She'd set the whole thing on fire. She's walking back to the Chosun military base when she's forced to move aside because of army? I'm not really sure. It's just like a crowd of people coming through. She watches as Pomil struts up the path on his horse with a haughty expression on his face. But the thing that catches Ashin's attention are his bows. So here's the thing about arrows. The rich and the wealthy really like to customize the feathers on the non-lethal end of their arrows as a symbol of, hey, look, it was me who committed that kill. And I'm sure in times of war it was used to determine who was the best warrior and rewards and things like that, right? But it also makes it rather easy to figure out who you killed. And do you guys remember that Ji-Hyun that Ashin found dead on her way back to her village all those years ago? Well, the arrows that she saw are the same arrows that Pomil is flaunting around while heading towards the base. Things are starting to click in Ashin's mind, and that night she jumps over some walls and makes her way into Chirok's office when she reads a report on the initial death of the 15 Pajui. Some Pajui Jurchens sneaked into Paesagun to steal Chinseng. All of them were ambushed and killed. A war with the Pajui Jurchens seems imminent now due to growing tensions, but we wiped out a Songcho Yain village and managed to prevent such a disaster. And we get a flashback to the day where the Jurchens killed the tiger and threatened Chirok with bloody revenge. Well, Chirok didn't actually let them leave. Instead, he and his posse formed a circle around the Jurchens and lied through their little teeth. You're right about that. Your brothers were not killed by a tiger. They were attacked by someone. In the place where we found the bodies of your brothers, we also found this. And Chirok throws a leather pouch in front of the Jurchens. These pouches were known to come from Ashin's village, so Chirok was the one who was inevitably responsible for Ashin's entire village being massacred. That's all she needs to know. There is absolutely nothing that will cool her now. A few hours later, that soldier pig trash man sneaks into Ashin's barn, but this time she doesn't let him assault her. Instead, she drives her knife into his heart, and as he's bleeding out, we see violet flowers get scattered next to him. And the next thing we know, the trash is up and about, and his movements are really odd. His legs are bent in weird angles, and he's drooping over, but the moment he sees some guards in the area, he starts running towards them while screaming. His eyes are blue and his teeth are black, and he has like this 3-inch cut on his forehead, and he pounces on the guards and starts biting them wherever he can get his teeth. When he's had his fill, he moves on to the next guard, and chaos spreads through the military camp. Each time he bites someone, they too turn into flesh-eating monsters. Soldiers try their best to fight these people back, but you can literally throw these monsters off a 10-story building, and they still use every single remaining bone of mobility that they have to chase after you. Even if all they had to do was worm their way, they would do it because of your flesh. Welcome to the world of K-zombies. Everyone at the camp is freaking out. Pomil gets eaten alive, Chirok gets attacked, but manages to light the zombie attacking him on fire, and that seems to be the only thing capable of stopping them. Chirok and one other official try to open the gates to the military camp, but as they try to lift their locks, their hands get pierced with arrows. Ashin is poised at the top of the camp, making sure that no one gets out. She kills Chirok and then continues to watch as destruction just decimates the camp. Anytime someone manages to get away from a zombie, she'll shoot them to either slow them down or kill them. And when everyone at the camp has been turned, she lures them all to one place and lights them all on fire. By the next morning, there is no one left at this camp base except for one person, and I think he's a criminal who somehow never never got discovered. He begs Ashin to save him, but instead she shoves him into a potato sack and drags him all the way back to her village. As she walks through the village, she sees visions of all the people who used to greet her with a smile, welcome her with warm hugs, and invite them into their houses. These visions are strange though, because when she enters one of the houses, there's a deer carcass laying in the middle of the room. It's only got a couple bites taken out of it, and all of the bites look like they came from human teeth, but it's a carcass. The fur is still on the deer. Ashin looks at it, and then she looks up into the room. You didn't eat anything again. I told you that you have to eat. And as the camera zooms out, we see a bunch of zombies chained while screaming and screeching at Ashin. But she is unfazed by all of their aggressive screeching. Instead, she reflects on her actions. I don't think that I've taken proper care of you all this time. Pheasants, deer, rabbits, that's not what you wanted after all. From this moment on, I'll provide you with only delicious meals. And she throws the criminal soldier man into the center of the room, and she watches as they feast on the human, thinking back to the time that they all had meat together thanks to her father. She basically couldn't bear to part with the people that meant everything to her, so she turned them all into zombies. As she turns around and walks away, she thinks, I'm not lonely. We are together, so I am not lonely. When my job here is done, after I kill every living thing in Chosun and church and soil, I will join you. The next time we see Ashin, she's in another Chosun town where the royal physician is visiting. She manages to get an audience with him, and she presents him with violet flowers. Can this plant really bring back the dead? Yes, that is correct, my lord. Before the nervous system rots, mash the plants and put it on an acupuncture needle, and then pierce the needle deep into the forehead. And then the corpse will come back to life in 2 hours. And we see little Ashin doing this to all of her village people with tears rolling down her face the entire time. In present day, after leaving the royal physician with a few samples of the flowers, she goes to this large open field and stands in the middle. A couple minutes later, Aidagan and his posse are riding through the field, and they stop when they see Ashin blocking their way. Ashin reaches back, grabs an arrow, and fires. And that is the end of the movie. This movie is insane. We actually have a saying in Telugu like "Aadapillala usuru eppudu poskogordu," which basically means that you should never incur the wrath of a female because it's simply just not something you can handle. I think some of you will probably know better than me regarding this, so please add your input down below if you do. But I think this comes from the fact that Hindu goddesses are just so freaking powerful. Like, of course, as women, they have so much patience and grace, and that's why when they get mad, entire worlds crumble. And I think this movie is a perfect manifestation of that. She held back so much. She endured so much, and it is just wrong to mess with somebody like this. And now they're all going to pay for it. If you've already watched Kingdom or you're going to tune into the recap, I think some of this feeling of rage that you have right now, if you're feeling rage like I am, disappears while watching Kingdom because you see innocent people getting hurt, and that's really never fun. So that's why I made the order like this. I didn't want this rage to justify what she did. Well, it's fun to be like, girl boss, yes, slay, get that revenge. She, at the end of the day, is going to impact the lives of individuals who had no say in this matter. Their only sin was to be born at a time where the higher-ups decided that it was better to sacrifice a village than deal with politics. Most of them are just regular people who really don't deserve the damage that she unleashed, in my opinion. And if you want to find out what that damage looks like, come back next week and I'll have part 1 of Kingdom up for you. Also, can we take a moment to talk about Ashin's father? I think there are a handful of fates that are worse than death, and his is one of them. Like, it wasn't 1 to 2 years, which is still really bad, but he was probably in that state for a decade. It's insane how he was just fed to the wolves, and like, I don't think anybody from Chosun was ever sent to look for this man, so that just makes it so much worse. Like, at least go see if he's dead and bring back his body. Now, of course, we can't end without talking about Ji-Hyun. She's the actress who plays adult Ashin, and I love her. She is such a good actress and very versatile too. She can pull off movies like this, psychological horrors, or rom-com dramas like Legend of the Blue Sea, which is hilarious, by the way. 10 out of 10, definitely recommend. And it was just really nice to see her on screen. I think this was released like after a 4-year hiatus, so it was just nice to see her after 4 years. The only little plot hole that honestly isn't even that big of a deal to me because I just love scouring Reddit for theories, but the whole is how a little 9 or 10-year-old managed to overpower and chain up all of the village folks when they are turned into these aggressive zombies and keep them there for a decade. I personally think the ones along the lines of, she probably started with the kids, some of the kids who were her closest friends, and they for sure would have been easier to overpower, and once she saw that the price she had to pay for bringing the dead back was losing the humanity in them, she probably tied everyone up after that. There was one Reddit comment that went like, you know, this makes no sense because when Ashin had come back, the bodies were all hanging, so how the fork did she manage to get all of them down by herself? I think this person brings up a very fair point, which, yeah, doesn't make sense, but this is a zombie movie, so I'm not expecting everything to make sense. If I was to offer an explanation though, it seems like the village people were starving more often than not, so maybe the adults themselves also didn't weigh that much, but that's a pretty loose argument. Anyway, that is all for today, so I will see you next time. Bye!